Hello everyone, and today we're back into another top 5 video, and we're going to be ranking all of the toxic types from worst to best. So all the toxic types like Billoforge are going to be properly ranked in order from worst to best. And we are actually going to see where does Billoforge rank compared to the other toxic types. So with that out of the way, let's head right on to this list. So number 10 onto this list, and the worst toxic type in the game is Terafly. This Loomian is horrible. It's probably one of the worst Loomians in all of Loomian Legacy. It has a decent defensive typing, but its defenses aren't actually that high. It doesn't hit that hard. And while it does have solid coverage options, in fact, it has great coverage options like Teraclaw, it's not fast enough to fully utilize it, and it doesn't hit hard enough to damage the opposing Loomians. Yes, it does have Ambush, and Ambush is nice. It can actually one-shot a couple Loomians if you use it right, but that's the problem. You gotta use Terafly correctly, and while that isn't a flaw, the thing is, Terafly isn't threatening. No one is swapping out on a Terafly because it's that bad. No one feels that threatened by a Terafly, so they're never gonna swap out of it. Not to mention, Terafly has a lot of really rough weaknesses that do take it down, and since its defenses are not that high, it really struggles. In fact, this is a toxic type Loomian that doesn't even have poison. It has poison barbs, but poison barbs is so exploitable. Air types are immune to it, toxic types get rid of it, and it just doesn't work out. And you need 2 of them to get toxic poison instead of normal poison. So Terafly is by far the worst toxic type in all of Loomian Legacy, and it's not even close. I would even go as far as say that it's worse than Cinemoth, but I'll talk about that matchup later. Number 9 onto this list, and it's going to be Cyborg. Cyborg is probably the hardest Loomian to rank on this list, just because of how unique Cyborg is. It has Handy, meaning that all of its support moves can go first. And it might be one of the best support Loomians in the game. It can barter heavy shackles, it can hypnotize, it can go bag of tricks. There's so much you can do with Cyborg, and even if you don't run the Handy set and run the Tank set, it's actually decently bulky, despite its defensive typing being very questionable. It does actually soak a decent amount of hits and hits decently hard, but there's nothing that makes Cyborg really excel in, apart from the Handy support role. And it's really hard to rank Cyborg because of it, because it is one of the best support Loomians in the game in terms of bag of tricks, hypnotize, barter, tox. I think it can even have square one and a couple other moves as well, making Cyborg really good in a support role. I could see people putting this Loomian a lot higher on the list, but personally I don't think the support role in Cyborg is good enough to really be put onto a proper team unless you're having some fun with it. Cyborg is still very good though. Like, this is leagues better than Terafly, but unfortunately it's only number 9 on this list. But I could see a lot of other people putting Cyborg higher because of the support role that it does have. And plus, having Barter and Heavy Shackles go first is really nice for getting rid of fast attackers. So yeah, Cyborg is number 9 on the list. Number 8 onto the list is going to be Blowtalks. Blowtalks was an extremely hard Loomian to rank on this list, mainly because there's a certain Loomian called Barblast that exists, and Barblast is way better than Blowtalks. We'll get to Barblast later, but Blowtalks is alright. It has a very good defensive typing, one of the best in the game, honestly. And after a bulk up, its melee defense can be very high, especially when you get that extra chip damage with sharp edges. You can even run Rejuvenate, you can run Baneful Bash. This thing is solid. This is not a bad Loomian at all. It's actually probably one of the best bulky offensive Loomians if you run Bulk Up and Rejuvenate. You could also still use it as a stalling one, but I think Barblast is better in that role because it's a lot bulky on both sides. Blowtalks is fine. I think it's average. It's an average toxic type in Loomian Legacy. Its defensive typing is good, its melee bulk is good, and the move that it has is good. But there's nothing that really makes it excel because Barblast does everything better besides the speed. But at least with the 82 speed does give something for Blowtalks to have over Barblast. So you can use this as a bulky offensive option. But other than that, I don't see Blowtalks being that useful besides that. And that's why Blowtalks is only number 8 on the list and not higher than the spot that it has, despite being very solid. Number 7 onto the list is going to be Billoforge. Yes, Billoforge reaches number 7 on the list. And its defensive typing is really interesting. Fire Toxic is awesome. Even though it's quad weak to Earth, it has so many good resistances. And its offensive coverage is fantastic. It has Tyrex coverage with Fire Stab and Toxic Stab. That's insane. It also has a Heat Wave, has Poison, has Raging Flame. There are so many ways to run Billoforge, and its stats are really good. Its melee and ranged attack are awesome, so it's probably one of the best mixed attackers in all of Loomian Legacy, while also having very good bulk on the melee side. That sounds like a very OP Loomian, so why is Billoforge not in the top 5? One problem. Its speed stat is terrible. And that might not sound like a bad thing, considering that a lot of slow tanks are very slow. But Billoforge is 24 speed. You can never fully utilize its high melee or range attack because it gets hit. And since its range bulk isn't that good, it kind of struggles. It needs to be more overall bulky instead of just being melee bulk, in my opinion. It still hits pretty hard, though, and that's huge. Like, I'm not letting that deny that. Billoforge can definitely take out 1 or 2 Loomians, but it's never a Loomian that can really sweep the opposing team, and that's why Billoforge is number 7 on the list. Number 6 onto the list is going to be Gobademic. Gobademic is also a very unique Loomian, as it is the second fastest Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy, and it's probably one of the best leads in Loomian Legacy as well. You run the Clutch Plushie with this, you get Poison Barbs and Barbs down while hypnotizing the Loomian. Really scary. You hypnotize the Loomian, you place Barbs and Poison Barbs down, and then if your Gobademic is still alive later in the fight, you health gift, and the Loomian on your team that's hurt gains its health back. Gobademic is an amazing support role, and it also hits decently hard as well. It doesn't hit the hardest, but with its Muck Blast stab, it can actually hit decently hard, especially on Loomians that are weak to Muck Blast. Gobademic is very threatening because it's very fast, can set up Barbs, and with Clutch Plushie, could definitely set up Barbs multiple times. Like in this clip, I placed it down on a Himber, and then I live via the Clutch Plushie, and then in this next clip, I predict the Chartiki swapping out to save it for later. So I placed the Barb, so the Chartiki can't swap back in. Putting pressure on that Chartiki pretty much made me win this fight. And that's what makes Gobademic so good. Its support role is one of the best in the game. A lot better than Cyborg's in my opinion. And it's just a lot more utilizable. Plus it hits decently hard. And that's why Gobademic is number 6 on this list. We're into the top 5. And the number 5 Loomian is Swolder. In my opinion, Swolder is one of the most underrated Loomians in all of Loomian Legacy. Has the same defensive typing as Terafly, but it's better. It hits harder than Terafly. It's bulkier than Terafly. It has a healing move. It has poison. And it pretty much has the same coverage as Terafly too. The only thing Swolder doesn't have compared to Terafly is that its speed is 10 speed lower. Which may sound worse for an offensive option, but Swolder has Brawn Boost. You could set up Brawn Boost, and with that coverage, you can hit a lot of different Loomians with it. And since it's a lot more bulkier, you could fully utilize its bulk better, you could heal health, you can poison the opposing Loomians, and you can hit pretty hard. Not to mention, Parasitize can give you HP back, which is amazing for Swolder. Since it's a lot bulkier, it lives a lot more hits, and since it hits harder than Terafly. Swolder pretty much beats Terafly in every aspect besides 7 less speed, which who cares when Swolder's more bulky and hits harder. So yeah, Swolder is a fantastic Loomian. It also has very good abilities like webbing that can lower the speed of melee attackers, and it has a secret ability which makes its toxic type moves hit harder. And that's why Swolder is extremely underrated. Every time I use Swolder, it always seems to shock me, and it always seems to destroy a lot of different teams. And that's why Swolder makes the top 5 on this list. Number 4 onto the list is going to be Snaggoop. And this is the league's better than everything else we've talked about so far. Snaggoop is fast, it hits hard, has a very good defensive typing, can heal at perch, can set up buck up, can provoke, has really good abilities like Immunize and Marksman, and hits hard with Muck Blast Stab. This thing is fantastic. And probably a really good offensive Loomian in the game. It can even throw poisons, it can throw poison barbs. There's a lot going for Snaggoop. And it's definitely one of the best toxic types in the game. But the problem is, Snaggoop was never going to make the top 3 because there are 3 toxic type Loomians, which are by far the best toxic types in the entire game. Venolin, Helvantic, and Barblast are the best 3 toxic types in Loomian Legacy. And even though Snaggoop is really good, it would have never have reached the top 3. So number 4 is the best spot it could have gotten, and it right deservedly deserves the number 4 spot. It's fantastic. But these next 3 Loomians are really hard. These next 3 were really hard to rank. And it wasn't the 3 Loomians themselves that were hard to rank. It was ranking them in the right spot. Because these next 3 Loomians are very closely ranked to each other, which makes this list very hard to make. But with that out of the way, Snaggoop is awesome. Let's head to number 3 on the list. Number 3 onto this list is going to be Venolin. Venolin is the worst of the 3 toxic types I just talked about, but Venolin is still amazing. It's one of the best range tanks in all of Loomian Legacy. Has a very good defensive typing of pure toxic. Only 2 weaknesses. Has much fatter coverage. Can barter heavy shackles. Can charade the opposing Loomians. Has Devious that can go through abilities. And fun fact, Devious actually goes through Captivating, which is perfect. You can poison a 2v2's Lamp Purge with it, which is awesome. That is huge for Venolin. And it also has Rejuvenate, so it can heal its health back. And that range defense is so high that not many range attackers can break through it. And while there are a lot of range attackers that hit harder nowadays, like Dragodyne and Charonix, Venolin is still a reliable range tank that has some really good utility. But why isn't it higher? Its melee bulk is meh. It's below average. It has alright melee bulk, but it's not good enough. And its other abilities aren't that good as well. Toxic Touch is okay, but its secret ability isn't that good. And that's why Venolin is number 3 and not higher, because I think there's another toxic type that is better overall compared to Venolin. And we'll get to them in a second. But Venolin, still a very reliable range tank, one of the best Varis in the game, has solid coverage, hits decently hard for a tank, and it has Rejuvenate, which puts it in the top 3. Number 2 onto this list is going to be Barblast. This was very close, and I was swapping these 2 Loomians, but Barblast is number 2 on the list. I think it hits harder than Venolin, especially when you have high explosive in effect, has better coverage, has poison and Rejuvenate, and it's better as an overall tank. People usually use this as a melee tank, but they put its bulk on both sides because it's that good at tanking hits on both sides. And it has one of the best defensive ghoul typings in all of Loomian Legacy. Water Toxic is fantastic. Barblast can also set up with Power Focus. Barblast can also use Raidful Plushie. Barblast can use Poison and Icicle Traps. There is so much Barblast can use, and even though Barblast isn't as good as a support role compared to Venolin, it hits harder and can be utilized better with its better bulk. There are less counters for Barblast because of its better bulk on both sides. And while it doesn't excel on either side, it does excel as a melee tank, but not as good as compared to other melee tanks in the game. So that's why it's not number 1, but since it's so bulky on both sides, that's what makes Barblast so good. And that's why Barblast is one of the best toxic types in all of Loomian Legacy. But there is one toxic type that we have not talked about yet. But we've talked about it on these top 5s before, and it was number 1 a ton of times. So let's get to him right now. The best toxic type in all of Loomian Legacy is Helvantic. I've talked about Helvantic a ton of times on these top 5s, and it's gotten number 1 several times already. But what else is there to say? It's fast. It hits hard. It's one of the best late game cleaners in all of Loomian Legacy. Has the best coverage options out of any Loomian in the game. Hits extremely hard. Has a high health stat. And that coverage, man. That coverage, I think I've said it already, but Thunder Crash and Toxic and Dart is amazing. And then when you combine that with Primal Slash coverage, there is nothing that could take a hit at least neutrally. Everything in the game can get hit neutrally by Helvantic. You can even run Pitch Black, so Gnarly Gash is Stab. You can run its secret ability. There's a lot of options you can run on Helvantic. But the best Helvantics, in my opinion, are the Specialty Boots ones with Aggressive. When Helvantic gets an Aggressive boost, it's one of the best Loomians in all of Loomian Legacy. Once it gets a +1, this thing can pretty much break through any team. And besides Tyrex and Himber, there are almost no counters for Helvantic, and that's what makes Helvantic one of the best toxic types in all of Loomian Legacy. Its defensive options are also solid as well, but not as good as the other 2. But the reason why it's number 1 is because it's one of the best offensive toxic types in the entire game. And here it is, the best toxic type in all of Loomian Legacy. Hope you guys enjoyed this list. If y'all disagree with my list or agree with my list, tell me in the comments below, and tell me y'all rankings on who are the top 10 toxic types in all of Loomian Legacy, because there are only 10 of them at the moment. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see y'all all later. Bye-bye!